Let's talk about something we all claim we're working on: changing our lives. We make resolutions, we get goals, we buy new planners and fancy gold lettering that says things like crush it or boss mode. And then 2 weeks later, we're binge watching Netflix with a tub of ice cream again. Here's the thing: you're not lazy, broken, or doomed. It's just you're running a system designed to do exactly what you're currently doing. That's where the book Atomic Habits by James Clear comes in. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent. This book gives you the cheat codes for human behavior. And today, I'm giving them to you with steps you can actually remember. Because let's face it, motivation is unreliable, goals are temporary, and life gets messy. What you need is a simple, science backed way to get 1% better every day without hating life. And that's exactly what you're going to get. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Atomic Habits starts with a powerful idea. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. You won't see results today. You may not see them this month, but habits don't lie. They build in the background, often going unnoticed, like compounding savings. So let's illustrate this. If you get 1% better every day, you're going to be how much better by the end of the year? 37 times better. But if you get 1% worse, not so good. You can do the math, trust me. It's not pretty. It's also like, think of the analogy melting an ice cube. You heat it up from 25 to 31 degrees, nothing happens. And then bam, 32 degrees, it melts. People only notice once the ice cube is gone. Meanwhile, you were grinding at 28 degrees for months, if not years. Same with learning guitar, losing weight, writing a novel. At first, you feel stuck, but progress is compounding in the background. Results always lag behind effort. So keep stacking those tiny wins, and one day, people will call you an overnight success, not realizing it took you 10 years of consistent effort to be that. So the big takeaway here: your habits are working before anyone, including you, can see them. Trust the process. Now let's talk about the difference between goals and systems. Look, everyone wants six-pack abs. The problem isn't the goal. The problem is the lack of a proven system to get there. James Clear makes the bold claim: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals are great for direction, but systems, they're your vehicle that you want to live in. Think of it like this: a writer doesn't get a book deal because they had a goal of writing a book. They get the deal because they showed up and wrote 500 words a day for weeks, months, or years on end. Or how about a runner? They don't cross a marathon's finish line because they wanted to. No, they laced up their shoes every single day for months, maybe even years. And let's not forget the real kicker: winners and losers often have the same goals, the same dreams. But guess what? They have different systems. Goals are usually binary. You hit them or you don't. But systems allow you to keep showing up. And a good system makes success inevitable because you're not depending on willpower. You're depending on the structure of the system in place. So if you want to win, don't obsess about the outcome. Fall in love with the boring, unsexy, repetitive processes that constitute your system, because that's where the real transformation hides. Now, I want to discuss the mic drop moment of the book. True behavior change is identity change, according to James Clear. Let's marinate on that. Most people say, I want to lose weight. What they should be saying is, I'm the type of person who doesn't miss workouts. Every action you take, remember, is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. You tidy your room, that's a vote for being organized. You study for 10 minutes a day, that's a vote for being a lifelong learner. Think about Batman. He doesn't say, I'm trying to be heroic. He is the hero. His habits, brooding, crime fighting, grovelly voice, all support that identity. It's about moving from trying to being. And no, you don't need to get it perfect, but you do need to be consistent. So step one, decide on the kind of person you want to be. And the next step then is to cast votes of that type of person, not with massive action, but with tiny, consistent choices that say, yeah, I am that person. Because when your habits align with your identity, you don't need motivation. That's the key. Motivation goes out the window because you become the kind of person who just does that thing. No drama, no mental negotiation. It's just what you do and who you are. Now, James Clear makes habit science very practical and provides us with the 4 steps of the habit loop. The first is the cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate the behavior. Your mind is continuously analyzing your internal and external environment for hints of where the rewards are located. And remember that cue is the first indication that you're close to the reward. So it naturally leads to the second step in the habit loop, the craving. And the cravings are those motivational forces behind every habit. Without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. And guess what? Most importantly, you don't crave the habit itself. You crave the change in the internal state that it delivers. Now, the third step in the habit loop is the response. That's the routine of performing the habit, which can take the form of a thought or an action. However, the response occurs, it depends on how motivated you are and how much friction is associated with that behavior. If a particular action requires more physical or mental effort than you are willing to expend, you're not going to do it. Now, the fourth step of the habit loop, the reward. And that's the final stage, the end goal of every habit. If the behavior is insufficient at any part of that cycle, it will not become a habit. Eliminate the cue and your habit will never start. Reduce the craving and you won't experience enough motivation to act. Make the behavior difficult and you won't be able to act. And if the reward fails to satisfy your desire, then you have no reason to do it again in the future. Clear then goes on to identify the 4 laws of behavior change that helps anyone establish good habits, and they tie into these steps of the habit loop. So let's unpack and examine each one. The first law of behavior change is to make it obvious. And this deals with the cue, the first part of the habit cycle. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. One tool to help with this is the habit scorecard. It's a simple exercise you can use to become more aware of your behavior. To create it on your own, make a list of your daily habits. The list might entail things like wake up, turn off your alarm, check your phone, take a shower, brush your teeth, make a cup of tea, and so on. Once you have that full list, look at each behavior and ask yourself, is this a good habit, a bad habit, or a neutral habit? If it's a good habit, write a plus next to it. If it's a bad habit, write a negative. And if it's a neutral habit, write an equal sign. Another tool to help with this step is what Clear calls implementation intentions. People who make specific plans for when and where they're going to perform a new habit are far more likely to follow through. So the simple way to apply this technique to your habits is to fill out the following sentence. I will do this new behavior at this time and in this location. Now, a special form of implementation intentions is what Clear calls habit stacking. What does this look like? Well, you're going to attach a new habit to a habit or a routine that you're currently doing. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will do 10 push-ups. After I start coffee, I will write down one thing I'm grateful for. Tie the new habit of what you're trying to do and develop to your current routines. So recap, the first law of behavior change is to make it obvious. Remember, every habit is initiated by a cue. We are more likely to notice cues that stand out. And make sure to make the cues of good habits obvious in your environment. And you will find that gradually your habits become associated not with a single trigger, but with an entire context surrounding that behavior. At that point, the context becomes the cue. The second law of behavior change focuses on the craving part of the habit loop. And in this law, it states you want to make the habit attractive. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is going to become habit forming. Remember, when it comes to habits, the key takeaway is this. Dopamine is released not only when you experience pleasure, but when you anticipate it. Whenever you predict that an opportunity will be rewarding, your levels of dopamine spike in anticipation. And whenever dopamine rises, so does your motivation to act. And it is the anticipation of the reward, not the fulfillment of it, that gets us to take action. Temptation bundling is one way to apply a psychology theory known as Premack's principle to your habits. It was named after the professor David Premack, and the principle states that the more probable behaviors will reinforce less probable behaviors. In other words, if you don't really want to process overdue work emails, you'll become conditioned to do it if it means to get something that you really want done. So the formula is after I do the habit I need, I get to do the habit I want or I love doing. For example, only watch your favorite show while doing the dishes. Only listen to your favorite playlist after you journal or go to the gym. Also, joining a community where the desired habit is normal is hugely beneficial. Want to read more? Join a book club. Want to run more? Find a running group. Peer pressure works. Use it. The third law of behavior change is all about making the routine easy. Forget perfection. Focus on reps. The most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. One of the most common questions that James Clear hears is how long does it take to build a new habit? It doesn't matter if it's been 21 days, 30 days, 300 days, 2 years. What matters is the rate at which you perform the behavior. You could do something twice in 30 days or 200 times. It's the frequency that makes the biggest difference. And what Clear recommends is start so small you can't say no. The key is to get started and get going on those repetitions. Another central idea is to create the environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible, which is going to help with the routine part of the habit loop. Because much of the battle of building better habits comes down to finding ways to reduce the friction associated with good habits and to increase the friction associated with bad ones. Remove the friction, such as set out your gym clothes the night before, pre-chop your veggies, put the guitar right next to your desk. The easier it is to start, the more likely you're going to continue. And if you want to cook a healthy breakfast, place the skillet on the stove, set the cooking spray on the counter, lay out the plates and utensils you'll need the night before, so that when you wake up, making breakfast will be easy. And remember, motion feels productive, but it's the action, the right actions, that count. Planning your new yoga habit is not doing yoga. Get on the mat and don't forget to prime your environment to make future actions easier. The fourth and final law of behavior change is to make it satisfying, and this deals with the reward part of the habit loop. We are more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience is satisfying. The human brain evolved to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed rewards. And the cardinal rule of behavior change is what is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Makes sense, right? So to get the habit to stick, you need to feel immediately successful, even if only in a small way. So the first three laws of behavior change, make it obvious, make it attractive, and make it easy, increase the odds of the behavior being performed one time. The fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying, increases the odds that the behavior will be repeated again. So if it feels good, you're going to do it again. Make it so satisfying. Celebrate. Mark an X on your calendar. Move a marble into the done jar. Track your streaks. Whatever works for you. The key is to have those measurable signs of progress to get that dopamine hit and make you feel like you've accomplished something, even if it's only something small. So once again, the best way to do this is to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to the habits that pay off in the long run, and a little bit of immediate pain to the ones that don't. Because in the beginning, you need a reason to stay on track. This is why immediate rewards are so essential. They keep you excited while the delayed rewards are accumulating in the background. Now, eventually, the intrinsic rewards, like a better mood, more energy, reduced stress, kick in. So you're going to become less concerned about chasing those secondary rewards. The more a habit becomes part of your life, the less you need outside encouragement to follow through. Incentives can start a habit, but remember, identity sustains the habit. And if you miss a day, just remember, don't miss twice. Missing once is life. Missing twice is a new habit. And that's how the couch can reclaim you. Before we end, I want to say something about how to break bad habits. And James Clear says to take the 4 laws we just covered and invert them. In other words, do the opposite. So the inversion of the first law, make it invisible. Reduce the exposure to the habit. Remove the cues of your bad habits from your environment. The inversion of the second law, make it unattractive. Reframe your mindset by highlighting the benefits of avoiding that bad habit. The inversion of the third law is make it difficult. Increase the friction by increasing the number of steps between you and your bad habits. Or try using a commitment device that restricts your future choices to the ones that benefit you. And then finally, inverting the fourth law, make it unsatisfying. Get an accountability partner, ask them to watch your behavior. Or another solution is to make the cost of your bad habits public and painful. So you don't need to overhaul your life. You do need to cast one tiny vote every day for the person you want to become. Want to be healthy? Eat 1 apple. Want to be a reader? Read 1 page. Want to be focused? Silence 1 notification. Whether it's writing, running, reading, or resting, stack your systems, not your stress. Let your habits do the heavy lifting. Because success isn't a finish line, it's a system to refine. So start small, start sloppy, but start. And soon enough, you'll look back and wonder how you ever lived without all of these great habits. Your future self is already thanking you and cheering you on. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.